So I'll just give you an update on the admin position. We have 3 applications to date for that. We got one Friday, so that brings us up to 3.
When does that close again?
Closes Friday,
This next Friday or last Friday?
coming Friday.
Okay.
So,
This week.
28th, yep.
Yeah.
so, if you had any discussion on, suppose we can meet with the committee after Friday and see what we want to do from there, I guess, so.
The last time we did it, do we have that score sheet that we used?
Yeah, I have all that yet, I just gotta find them, so.
Because then we could, I suppose we should probably go through them all and,
Well, all 3 of them.
well, some people wait till the last minute. There may be 8 by the end of Friday, 8 or 10 by
Right.
the end of Friday, so.
We've had 2 for a couple weeks now, and we just got one on Friday, so, I don't know. So, that's where that's at. Pool, I did put an update in there. Things leaking pretty bad if you read my report. We got it slowed down a little bit, but the liner's well due. That was a good decision to make on replacing that, so. So we've been working on some code enforcement, mainly on the noxious weed side lately. It's kind of my focus, but we sent 26 weed notices. We got 13 complied and 13 enforced by the city. Building codes, we have sent 3 in 2023. We had 0 complied on the new round, but we had 2 that complied from 2022, so that's a little bit of a win there, so. And then Jason provided us nuisance updates with his report. Other than that, I've spent a lot of money with, or money too, but a lot of time with PFA and rural development, coming up with a plan for this project. With the delays in PFA, it's been a rough few months. Kyle can attest to that too, but trying to get everything organized to make sure we can use all the grant money in time for the project, for the RD's cutoff, which is the end of September, so. But I think we got a plan together, so. Took a lot of time, a lot of meetings to go through that, and other than that, just working on some maintenance for trimming trees, and some boulevard streets. 4th Street East is one of them. State Street, did a little bit of work there. Just gonna kind of work around as we can get a group big enough to do another round, so. Probably gonna be doing some street maintenance here pretty quick here again too, so. We did have 70,000 budgeted for this year for, we got some alleys we wanna repair and some crack sealing to do, so.
Those people lined up already, the crack ceiling?
Not yet, I got some calls out to a few different contractors for some quotes, so. Any questions on my report?
Shane, with the dry weather, will that preclude a need to spray for mosquitoes again, or?
Well, we're planning on doing it this week. They are, some of the evenings get kind of bad, but we're gonna do it this week, and that'll kind of take care of National Night Out. So our plan is to do it Wednesday or Thursday. Weather's kind of changes a lot, so can't say for sure. So we'll likely do it this week, and then probably not until Labor Day. We'll reassess before Labor Day. The last couple of years, I think we sprayed a week before Labor Day, so.
I can see why you'd want to do it in the park, but I just haven't seen many mosquitoes around my place.
They come out late. They're not too bad during the day, but they are coming out late. If we do get some more rain, they might come around, but I know we're just gonna kind of assess it as the time comes, so. Anything else?
How are you keeping up with everything with wearing 2 hats?
Prioritizing a lot, but
Working all right though?
yeah, so far. There's really busy weeks, and some weeks aren't so bad, but it's, this week's been a challenge and so was last week, but we'll get through it. Just, a lot of contract stuff with the project and then getting these reimbursements sent in for like the Petro Fund and PFA and RD and with Lyon County now, I got them involved too, so it's just billing them out so we can get everything in the funds before we get the payments out for the contractors, so. A lot of stuff to organize, I guess, so, but one way or another, I'd be involved with it no matter what, so.
Well, we appreciate you giving it the old college try.
Yeah. So I know some things may slip through the cracks, but I'll try to get the many done. So. That's all I have.
Do we need to do, do you want to do the resolution that Tyler has under his staff report? I don't know, forget it. I don't know where it's at though.
I'll make the motion that we approve resolution 2023-65. That's the budget amendment number 2. Sentence.
Yeah. Do we have a second?
Second.
First and second, any further discussion? Roll call, please.
George Landite,
Aye.
Jerry Jones,
Aye.
Tom Dobson.
Aye.
Are you still there? Seth Schmidt,
Yes.
Dave Teagues. Aye. Jenna Visu,
Yes.
and Ann Foreman.
Aye. All right, do we want to move on to the audit?
We have Val yet with Art.
Oh, yeah, let's do Val first. You don't want to go through that.
I'm not going to do the audit either. I set all these up here. So as you know, we have $5,000 budgeted this year for a public art piece. And we are working with Sammy Jo Miller, who's here with us this evening, to do the project. And she has done some research over the past several months, talking to the community about what types of art they enjoy, what types of art they would like to see in Tracy. And so she's put together 3 possibilities for you to consider, and I will let Sammy Jo talk more about those.
If you guys haven't noticed, I'm a really nervous public speaker, so if I'm talking too fast, just slow me down. I can do small groups. This is intimidating.
We're not that scared.
You're doing well.
True. So yeah, as far as basic questions, I know you guys just got this tonight, so if you need a minute to look it over, that's okay.
Where are we putting this art at?
We haven't decided. It is all still in the planning process. We haven't moved forward with anything. All we've done so far is I've kind of set up little art stations at different events and throughout town and to gather information about what the community wanted to see. So these are just basic proposals and ideas for projects we can pursue further. So there's no budget for any of these projects yet. We haven't gone into design. It's just kind of what would the city council like to see us go for is where we're at now.
And are we talking of just occasional, short-term, seasonal type of art projects, or are you talking permanent?
This would be a permanent installation. So the 3 that we've kind of narrowed it down to based off of the community responses is the ghost advertisement, which would be something like sample 1 on the left on the bottom. And the idea would be to kind of represent the Red Rooster Cafe, because people mention that a lot when talking about what they liked about growing up in Tracy or being a part of the Tracy community. So that could be something that we could represent having been a part of the community by doing a ghost advertisement on either the side of the library or on the side of another building that would be easily visible and accessible from the downtown area. The second project would be a sound garden, which would be like sample 2, not exactly like that. I'm kind of have some other plans, but it would be interactive. A lot of people with small children would like to see something that could be interactive or be functional in some way. And then sample 3, which I think could be a really excellent addition to downtown, right over where the library is, over, I don't know the names of the streets, but the one where we were talking about having parking on. And that would go over the top of the street, so we'd have to take into account measurements, and the wind down here would have to be taken into account as well. So there's a few problems to be solved with each one of the projects, but we haven't delved into that yet. And we also are exploring the option of having the Southwest Minnesota Arts Board. They have public art grants that could go up to $20,000 with a certain percentage match, which we would not exceed what has already been put towards the project. So if our budget exceeds what you guys have put forward towards the project already, we would then pursue a grant with Southwest Minnesota.
What was the reason that we had to stop putting the banners across the road?
Wind and the power company not allowing it.
Well, we used to even do a banner across Highway 14, and then we were told we could not do that.
Yeah. That's why I was asking why we
Yeah.
can't do that anymore.
For the ghost advertisement, so there's a couple downtown that you can still see, can't you, on a couple buildings? For the old advertisements on the
Yeah, I
buildings.
think they're
where
kinda
it's
hidden on the
painted up
top.
On the top of them. Could those like be touched up a little bit?
Yeah, we could certainly
Or
revisit
something like
those,
that?
if that's something that you'd be interested in looking at as part of this project. Because
Because
the,
it's something that's already there. I mean, you have to look at
Remember
them,
where
but
that's at?
it's on, is it on the old bank? It's on, there's part of one on.
I don't know where, but I know
that
I've seen
side.
one in town.
If you look downtown, look up on one of the buildings, because there's like an old sign for, I don't remember which old business it was, but they had one that's painted up, the old painted up there.
We can certainly look into what's available in town, for sure.
Now everybody will be driving downtown after this.
I know. I'm gonna do the same thing and take that way out of town.
Jason's sitting back there shaking his head so he knows
It's on
right
the
where
old
it is.
bank.
It's on the old
You can
bank?
still- You can still think it out a little bit.
Okay.
When you're coming down 3rd Street or South Street?
3rd Street is, it's on the north side of the building.
Okay.
Well, and if we can figure out what the initial advertisement was for, if anyone has an older picture, I know the museum has a couple of pictures from ghost advertisements that used to be visible downtown. I don't know how many of them are buildings that are still standing, or I don't know enough about the history yet, so I'm still learning, but I know Tracy has had quite a few of them.
The sound garden, would that be something like wind chimes or a xylophone?
I'm thinking more of like in the picture they have it in tunnels, so I was thinking more of like tunnels that went underground and came back up, and then so the sound would travel through them and kind of make it like a matching game. This is like the concept I've been toying with. So this one would have, say, a pink flower, and then the other end of that would have another pink flower, whereas there would be maybe several flowers in the sound garden, and to hear your friend, you would have to be at the matching end, so there would be some kind of matching element to the interactive piece as well as the sound, because then they can talk to each other once they've matched up the flowers, and it would kind of look like a little bit of a tube garden with little flowers. That's the concept I'm toying with right now for that.
How sanitary is that then?
Well, it should be at a distance. Like they have them at parks now where they have like the microphones, or they're like a big, how would you say, like a funnel almost, and then they have a mesh screen over it so the kids don't throw rocks down there. There are a few things with that, but it's not meant to like put their mouth up against it. It should be larger than that. This is just a sample that I pulled of an idea, so we can visit those issues certainly. I want to steer away from anything with mallets. Generally, I have children, so.
Sammy Jo, could you just review with us the public survey?
Yeah.
How did you survey the public?
So with the first one, it's pretty simple. I asked that question, what type of public art would you like to see in the Tracy community? And we had people answer the survey online. Some people filled it out in person when they were chatting with me. And they were able to check any and all boxes that applied for that. So a lot of them checked murals and sculptures, and then a few of them picked interactive or functional. So not like 65% prefer murals and 70% prefer sculptures. 65% prefer both, and then an additional 5% prefer sculptures. And then when I asked about the locations and subjects and ideas, it was more of like a, tell me about your experience in Tracy. What's your favorite place to be in Tracy? And what is your favorite memory of being a community member in Tracy? So I asked kind of more broad questions to get kind of a sense of how they felt about it and where they would like to see these things. And a lot of people mentioned the parks in general, not just Central Park, so that's an idea to explore too. Specifically mentioned the baseball park that's over by where you guys are putting the industrial area. They had mentioned seeing something over there. But yeah, that was basically it. A lot of people mentioned Boxcar Days. That is also their favorite part about living in Tracy, so.
And the in-person surveys, were they done at the library, at some?
I was at Burgers, Beers, and Brews for one of them. What was our first one? The Women's Expo. I was at that one. I did a couple of artist demonstrations at the library where people came in and chatted with me. And then I was outside the library a couple of days and had some people come up and say hello. Some people hollered from their cars, so I brought them a survey.
Would it help to get more of a cross-section, to have an open house or something at the library or city hall or something?
Absolutely. If we want to take an avenue to gather more information, we certainly can. Because the amount of people I had fill out the survey in general was not high. It was not what I was expecting, but I got some really good responses from the people that did participate.
Have you visited with some people, teachers in our school system?
I have not
involved
yet,
in the
no.
arts?
We kind of started over the summer, so I haven't.
Sure, okay, well, that'd be an idea.
Mhm.
No, I think there's some really cool ideas here, but if we can somehow get more people from the public to weigh in or get their ideas, and I think it's a good thing to do in our town.
Thank you. All right. Now the audit.
All right, just because I'm new this year and so I haven't seen many of your faces, my name is Sarah Oberlo. I'm with an accounting firm out of Redwood Falls, and we did the audit for the first year in 2022, or for 2022 year end, 2023 audit. And so basically, I put the books in front of all you guys. That you have two different booklets. The larger reams of paper is the actual audit report. That's what will get submitted to the state. That's what goes in with the single audit, all of those pieces. The other book has just a really high level overview, comparison information. Being it's only our first year, I only had 2 years worth of data, so it's not a lot of information in there. We will build on that over the course, but just kind of gives you, like I said, a much higher view. So we'll just briefly touch base a couple of the pages in the actual audit, give you that overall audit opinion and such, and then we'll go into the smaller book and kind of highlight that high level. So if you go in the larger one on it's page 2 at the top. It's about 7 physical pages in after you skip through some of the table of contents pages. That starts with the independent auditor's report letter. I'll give you a second to find the right page.
What page number?
It's 2 at the very top, but it's the one that starts on the letterhead. So it's the one in the very thick book.
In the thick book, like
Yeah.
what, 5 pages in?
At least
Here,
5.
5 or 6 pages in.
So basically, this gives you the independent auditor's report letter. This gives you your opinion on the financial statements. The first section there starts with the opinion. 2021 audit years, we moved that opinion to the very top. Our standards decided it's what you guys are looking for, so we want to start with that. It used to be hidden at the very bottom. Basically, what those 2 paragraphs tell you is you guys have an unmodified or a clean audit opinion for 2022. We feel the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects. The next section there gives the basis of opinion. The financial statements are prepared in accordance with government auditing standards. And then the next section there, the responsibility of management. Management, the city is responsible for the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements. So we do prepare your financial statements for you, which is a very common thing. Out of about 55 cities I audit, I only have one I don't prepare financial statements for. So in small entities, that's common, but it's a great reminder that even though I prepared them and brought them to you tonight, they're your financials, not mine. The top of page 3 gives the responsibility for the auditor, and our responsibility, what that long section is telling you is we're responsible for the opinion. So again, you're responsible for the financial statements, I'm responsible for the opinion. In an ideal world, if someone on staff is actually preparing the entire financial statement, basically we just overview that and then throw those opinion letters in there. So that kind of highlights the audit opinion letter. If you skip way to the back, there's a couple more letters in here. On page 93, so I think it's about 102 pages long or something, so it's going to hit almost to the very back. 93 is the report on internal control. And what that tells you is we don't audit your internal control structure, but we have to evaluate it in the audit process, and anything that comes to our attention must be communicated to you. There's 2 findings related to internal control. The first finding, they're going to be on page probably 90, skip back a ways because we have the single audit stuff in here. On 97, the bottom of 98 and the top of 99. The first finding is the fact that the city did not prepare the financial statements. Again, in that perfect world, you would have a larger staff that actually prepares the financial statements. And then on top of page 99, the second finding is the lack of segregation of duties or lack of separation within the accounting. Ideal world, you would have a staff of 8 to 10 accounting staff. So you do have a much better internal control structure than the city with the standalone person, but you still don't have that true separation in all of the functions. There's a, one hand is doing multiple tasks still along the way.
How do you recommend a city of our size to handle that then?
So we're not supposed to say there's really nothing you can do about it. Ultimately, you need to, really you need to weigh cost benefit. And so to truly eliminate some of those, is it worth the cost in your eyes? Like I said, I have one city that they prepare their own financial statements. They hire another accounting firm that does basically a pre-audit, prepares the financial statements for them. They act as management. We come in and do the audit. They're essentially paying for 2 audits because just because another audit firm does it doesn't mean my work changes. So in your eyes, is a second audit fee worth not having that finding? Same thing with the staffing, is another 3 to 4 staff people that you probably really don't need full-time worth getting rid of the finding?
However, in your opinion, I think in the past we've made some changes and improvements where money comes in, somebody records that, then turns things over to someone else, right, for deposits and that sort of thing. So
what you want to do is try to find the most separation you can find, even if you're not going to get to the full amount. One of the things that it makes it really hard on a small entity is dealing with the vacations or leaves type of thing, because the moment, this person always does the deposit, but they're gone for a week and now I do it, something could happen in that week I did it. If I'm also doing the banking, the reconciliation after the fact or something like that. So that's where, really, even if you had that perfect amount, you could truly separate everything, you end up almost with your hands tied, because when someone's not there for the day or something, you feel like you can't go on. So you want to do as much as you can. Will you ever do enough to truly eliminate the finding 100%? Probably not. Does that help?
So excuse me, so really having people cross-trained in the office would help, so that if one person is gone.
You don't want to.
The cross-training thing isn't so much going to help you on the internal control side. Some of the things when you look at internal controls, we have them for fraud and errors. You know, we want to make sure we have control so that someone can find a mistake if something happens and someone can catch fraud if it's out there. You know, the errors is kind of a big area where cross-training can help with. You know, the more people who can take a second look at something, you're going to have more people who can find those errors in a timely manner. You know, the fraud piece, because of the gaps and you have where people may or may not be available all the time, you're not going to get that perfect. Another thing too, and just briefly, some cities will use resources outside of staff to try to help too. One of the big examples they say is if someone, you know, in the technology world where banking is all online, it's a little less necessary. But back in the old days when they used to mail the statement to the city office, if that statement went before someone outside of finance first, or someone outside of city staff, for example, the mayor or a council person or someone, you know, at least then you've got some eyes looking at it before someone can try to manipulate something if there is something going wrong. So sometimes and just making sure you're more aware of that approval process. That, you know, when you get information in front of you, it's being looked at and approved in an appropriate manner. Those are sometimes the council's biggest, you know, the biggest thing that you have before you. On page 100, there is one Minnesota legal compliance finding. I feel kind of bad even kind of having to say it. Minnesota requires cities to have 110% of their bank deposits covered by collateral. You guys fell short, but only to the tune of it wasn't at the 110%. It was 100% covered, but you were short like $30,000 or something. Part of it, and then as soon as the money goes out in the first day of the year when the big bond payments are made, we're fine. So one thing, and banks are notorious, it costs some money to hold collateral for you, so they like to play that thin. And so one thing to bear in mind is the city always gets a big chunk of money at the tail end of the year with the LGA dollars and the tax dollars coming in. And so really just make sure that you have that coverage. Obviously, we had some banks go under, not necessarily locally, but some banks in the country did go under this winter. You know, so basically that requirement is so that you have, if a bank went under, the city's tax dollars or the residents' dollars are all covered, that they're not out millions of dollars. The FDIC coverage is only at $250.
So you're saying there's insurance out there that we could buy, or
the FDIC coverage anyone gets on any bank account. The collateral is on top of that. So the state statute requires that your deposits outside of FDIC are 110% collateralized, and that the bank holds in your name for you. And you guys were, I can't remember the exact amounts offhand, but I wanted to say you needed about an extra $100,000, and you were only at about another $70,000 above what your bank balance was.
are you talking of our reserves? Or
Of any of the dollars. It takes into account the total dollars of the city. Because they want to make sure that all of your money, if the bank were to fail, that Tracy is not out any money. I mean, ideally, if the bank failed and you only had FDIC coverage, you would only get $250,000 of the $6 million or $5 million or whatever the city has. So what that is the bank has to hold securities in your name, so if they fail, then you get money from this bank, that bank, the other bank, because they're holding these dollars, guaranteeing it for you.
so we need to go to the bank and make those arrangements.
So you're good now because the money came in at the tail end of the year, you fell short, and then you sent the money out in January. You're good probably today. I'm not 100% because I don't know the numbers, but what I would say is and I can talk to Tyler a little more in detail on this, as you get closer to the end of the year and those LGA and tax dollars are going to come in, really relook at that and make sure if you're short that the bank is aware and you get the funds in time. Because the bank will tell you they're watching it for you, but they will look at this January 10th when they're closing out the month of December. They won't look at it December 10th before they close out the month. So they'll find out you're short when it's too late. So, I mean, it's really the responsibility of the city to make sure your funds are collateralized. But, so that ends up is a legal compliance finding. The state requires us to test certain Minnesota legal statutes, and that was one that came up. So you might get a notice from the state auditor's office after this is submitted, and you can basically just tell them that, you know, we are going to, you know, take additional steps to make sure that, that the collateral is there in the future. And then the last page there is in the report is the legal compliance letter, and it's just stating that one finding again. And then the second book you guys have in there is the communication or the letter. We have to send a communication to those charged with governance or the city council. So it just details kind of the audit process. If we had issues in the audit, we would note it there. Just because someone asked me before, being it was the first year audit, there were what I would say is expected difficulties, not necessarily difficulties, but just, you know, hips and hurdles to go through. But, and then obviously with the staffing turnover, I know we had hoped to try to get this in a little bit earlier in July, but obviously that kind of just brought a little bit of that on. But outside of the normal kind of expected with those issues, there were nothing else. And then if you look into the report, it just, like I said, it shows you some of those charts and graphs, breaks down the general fund, the revenues. Kind of to make things short, if you go back to page 5 in those graphs, one thing I would note is as far as what's the health of the general fund of the city of Tracy, the state's recommendation is for cities to have 35 to 50% of unassigned fund balance, which is the remaining dollars you have at the end of the year going into the next year. You know, roughly you guys were at about 5 months operating revenues and about 36.3 of expenditures. So you're at that kind of bare bones minimum of what the state wants you to be. The city does have other resources set aside in some reserve funds, so it's not super alarming. But one thing to bear in mind as you look at projects and such going forward, the amount in the general fund is really just that amount needed to pay normal day-to-day operations. The other thing on the bottom there in the lower graph, it looks at the unassigned fund balance in relation to the next year's expenditures. And you can see in 2020, you guys were at 25%, and now you're hovering between that 30 and 35%. And so you're obviously going in the right direction. I don't know where you were much before that, or if that's ever been kind of brought to light. And then if you look in page 7, and I think this is kind of where some of those funds that you guys were talking about earlier comes into play. On the bottom of page 7, under the capital project funds, there's the 400 capital projects fund, and that is just the general city capital dollars. At the end of 2022, there was $763,700 in there. So I know before Eric left, we had a conversation on the community center, and I know he had mentioned that part of that is what has been, so to speak, earmarked for that community center. So I'm thinking when you're looking where some of those dollars are, that hopefully there's a better breakdown of what that entails. Otherwise, you guys had, I mean, most of your funds had positive fund balances, which is good to know. The other one, because you do have the municipal liquor store, if you go into page 10, it shows the liquor fund. The change in net position is the profit or loss, the overall for the year. For 2022, you're showing a decrease of $34,000, only because this $97,000 transfer went out. So when the state looks at the fact of was the liquor store self-supporting, they're going to look at the dollar before that $97,000 transfer. So you're going to be to the positive about $60,000. Any other specific questions on anything, or want me to highlight where you?
How does the liquor store profitability that we've had this last year compare with state averages?
So one of the liquor stores are really getting harder to look at. I think we are, I want to say maybe 7 municipal liquor stores is all we have left out of in excess of 50 cities. Of those, a good half of them are off-sale only, which obviously they're very different as far as operations than a combined on and off sale. What I can tell you is you guys seem to have kind of come out of COVID better than what some other cities have. The 2020, 2021 years were really good for liquor stores. And you know, some that had been seeing losses had saw profits in those years, and now they've kind of dipped back down. So kind of looking at your numbers, you know, you guys came, you know, and held your own out of COVID, if not even increased a little bit. The gross profit margin came down, but your sales went up. So I would say you're probably, I don't know about the average across the board, but I would say you're unique to the ones I've seen in that realm. Any other questions? The other thing is you look through things when you look at like your sewer fund. One of the things that I personally wouldn't have done if I was here 3 years ago when some of these projects started is run some of the projects through the enterprise funds. For example, if you look at page 9, the sewer fund, because the project's getting allocated out to each of those enterprise funds in the year of construction, you're almost skewing your numbers by throwing all this grant revenue in there when that grant money is now going to buy you an asset that you're going to depreciate off over the next 40 years. So sewer fund looked like it made $1.4 million last year when really you got 1.7 to build some infrastructure. So you're getting almost a little bit of skewed numbers and you have to kind of back into some of that. So to an untrained eye, someone's going to look at the sewer fund and say, why are you charging me money to, you know, run the sewer when you've got all this money in there, when in all reality, that wasn't operations revenues going in there.
So should we be doing something different going?
Well, you know, you're so far deep into the project, we didn't kind of adjust anything with it. But when I've always talked to USDA, they strongly recommend, really part of their grant stuff is you're required to run it through a capital project fund, which means everything related to the project gets run into one pot, and then at project completion you divvy out the asset, you divvy out the debt, you divvy all that out, and so the amount comes into sewer kind of in total at the end. And what that does is just these larger revenue sources don't, you know, skew those numbers year over year, and you get to see a better true what did it cost to operate the sewer fund in that given year. Because that grant money wasn't part of the operations of the sewer.
So should we change something for next year?
I wouldn't say necessarily for next year, but maybe next project. When you get into, it sounds like maybe there's a phase 4 or something along the way. And you know, if you get into some of those next phases, I would definitely run it as a capital project and run it outside of your enterprise funds. And then at project completion, roll it into the related funds. It's a little simpler to track the day-to-day throughout the year of the project. You get to see everything in one pot and then close it at the end.
Is the sewer fund a dedicated fund that only things related to sewer can be used to fund it?
No, any of your enterprise funds can be used to, you know, support your general government or whatever. Your enterprise funds, sewer has a substantial amount of cash, but they also have a substantial amount of debt. So when you start looking at where does the city have some money, maybe to look at some of these other projects, you know, what level are you willing to drain down some of those funds when you've got high debt service out there too. But yeah, enterprise funds, the reason the city goes into business is supposed to self-support your other funds. So, you know, that's why you do those transfers over to the general fund each year. But I guess if you're looking like that high overview, you've got positive debt service balances, so that's a good thing. You've got money coming in that's paying your debts. It's just really building up some of those reserve funds and, you know, working to keep that general fund budget intact so that you're not dipping below that 35% and maybe even trying to get that up a little bit. And the reason really being is you're just heavily reliant on LGA and tax dollars, and those come in two payments throughout the year. So you need that 5 to 6 months, you know, cash reserves at the end of the year to get you until the next LGA dollars come in.
Is there other cities in this predicament, or are we unique?
I have ones that are way worse. You know, you're kind of right, you know, at the bottom that you want to be. And you're at the bottom of what you want to be, and you do have other funds out there. So it's not, you know, I usually look at if you get to a point before the LGA dollars come in and you don't know how you're going to cover salaries, that's usually when you have a problem, when the city's truly living the paycheck to paycheck. But, you know, I have cities out there too with a lot more money, and it's trying to find that balance because you don't want too much money sitting in the account. Then why are we taxing? You know, so finding that happy medium, and then, you know, making sure you have enough reserves so that you have the money for the rainy day.
In the far distant past, there were times that LGA money was not always going out when the state was in trouble financially.
Right. There were years where things got cut or that kind of thing, and luckily those years are kind of behind us, and it sounds like they're going back up a little bit, but, you know, that's one thing, you know, if you can keep that budget intact, to where you're, you know, if anything, adding a little bit to that surplus each year, you're going to be in a much better financial position.
So in summary, you're saying our fund balance, general fund balance is adequate, but just barely.
Right, exactly. Yep. You're kind of, if you look at what the state recommends, you're at the bottom of their recommendation. I mean, I've seen as low as 4%, so, you know, that's not even close. And I've seen as high as 200%, which is, again, why do we have all this money? So it's trying to find that happy medium.
What's the ideal percent again?
The state's recommendation is 35 to 50%. And then I usually try to say too, like, throw a little caution out there. That's what they say for all cities. The smaller you are, the more heavily reliant you are on LGA and taxes, so it's probably more ideal to be pushing closer to that 50%. I've had some of my cities go through bond ratings, and the bond rating councils want to see closer to 75% to get a better bond rating. So some of my cities say, we don't care what the state says, we want a good bond rating, we're going to go for 75.
Does the amount of indebtedness that the city has, how much of an impact does that have on our bond rating?
The overall, I mean, that plays into it, yes.
Okay, are we in danger with the level of debt that the city has of maybe losing a little bit of our bond rating, or what do you think?
I'm not from the bond council, so I'm not going to tell you exactly that, but I would say for what I see with other cities, you're definitely kind of in that middle of the road. You have a fair amount of debt, but for the size and the dollars of the revenues, it's not a huge amount. I have cities that are half your size with just as much debt. So, you know, it's all in relation to, you know, the funds out there. And then, you know, you guys have the housing and various other funds that you're spreading some of that debt out over. You know, some cities, they have that kind of debt just in their general, in their water and sewer.
Very good.
Any other questions for?
Not yet, I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Well, Tyler has my information, so if anyone comes up with questions, and, you know, feel free, call or shoot me an email. I definitely can explain further or get back. And in the ideal world, I would have had these to you a week ago, so you had some time to overview, but we were trying to work down to the wire and get it out, so wanted to get this so it's submitted. The deadline with the state is August 15th, so pending you guys are approving it, I will get it submitted here yet this week, so it's in their hands. All right, thank you.
Thanks. So do we have to do an approval? Or she just sends it in and it's approved?
No, we have to approve it the way
I would think you'd have to approve it.
we have to accept the audit.
Need a motion to formally approve and accept the audit as presented.
That it, Dave?
So can we can do that and just write it up later?
I would have you make a motion to approve it, and if you need to, you can formalize that with a resolution that's signed later.
Well, I'll make the motion that we approve the the audit as presented.
Second?
First and second, any further discussion? Roll call, please.
All right. Seth Schmidt,
Yes.
Tom Dobson.
He fell asleep.
Tommy still there? Jerry Schoens,
Aye.
George Landite,
Aye.
Jan Arvizu,
Yes.
Dave Teagues,
Aye.
Mayor Corman.
Aye. It says new business city administrator. Did we touch on that already?
Must have.
Or do you have something else to add?
So we have resolution 2023-59.
See, we don't have anything. Well, I don't anyway.
Next page.
No.
Seth does.
It's on your iPad.
It's on my iPad.
It's on the electronic.
I like crossing.
Did you catch that last?
Yep, I would say aye. I couldn't get my mic turned on.
Okay, I'll add you on there then.
Okay, there we go. Okay, so, this change order, are we back to the same one from?
Yeah, so change order 1 for the Center Street project. I have Kyle here tonight to explain that in further detail. Part of this kind of falls under the county expense too that we'll get reimbursed for. But if you have any questions on that, it's basically the same as what was presented 2 weeks ago. So.
All right, Kyle.
Sure. So for the Center Street project with this current resolution, change order 1, that includes a few items related to additional traffic control signage and an additional sanitary sewer inside drop product that was to be added to the project. The traffic control signs were an additional ask above and beyond what the original bid traffic control plan was. So that's something that the contractor had put together there. I think we included their invoicing. They typically bid on a number of signs and a square footage of signs in their original bid. The ad for the road closed and road closed to through traffic signs were not shown on that initial traffic control plan. It was it was something that was, our intent to be included as part of that project from just a safety and a traffic control standpoint. There was some technical difficulty during the plan plotting, the actual design plot that came out, and I think there was even the wording from a broken link is C dash da 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 where the image should have been. So that was something that was intended to be included in that original bid, but wasn't shown in there. So it's additional to have them include it would be additional scope of work on the project. The additional hospital detour signs are also part of it. That was something that was added after the fact, after that traffic control was set up. And the sanitary sewer drop was something that was discussed with the contractor as a best product to use in that location.
And Kyle, I know we discussed the drop, inside drop versus outside drop, and the problem there was generally when you add or subtract a quantity, it's a unit price item, like per linear foot or per piece or whatever it may be. Well, in this case, the internal drop was not included in the itemization of, the line item bidding. So the external drop was, so they couldn't really add an internal drop because it didn't exist in the list. So I think, Kyle, am I explaining that correctly on that portion of it?
Yeah, since we didn't already have a bid unit price on it, that we didn't have a basis to go by for that instance.
And in this case, we'd be subtracting a exterior drop.
The overall price for that versus one on the exterior, I'd say is on the order of about half the price. And I think for this particular location, tying into an existing manhole rather than replacing the whole manhole or digging down an additional 10 feet below what we already have to dig down to do the pipe work and worry about more of the backfill and those type of issues, this inside drop product is the right thing to do in this case.
I don't think our question was concerning that. I think we
Okay.
were fine with that aspect of it.
Sure.
It was the signage.
Okay.
Why is that our responsibility versus your responsibility? I mean, it should be quite obvious if you're tearing a road out, there should be road closed signage. Plus, I know I've brought it up multiple times about the hospital signage, that just because it didn't get from one plan to the other plan, whatever, that shouldn't be our responsibility. That's what we are questioning.
Yeah.
If it's an oversight, what's your job?
If I had missed that during the discussion, I know we had talked a lot about some of the new signage that went around the hospital. I don't recall the detour signage part of it prior to the design plans. I do appreciate though that if there was discussion on that and I don't have notes on it, that part of it's on us. For, you know, if there's additional cost to come back later, like for them to come back out and add those signs after the fact. From how I typically handle these type of situations, if it's a part of the work that, like I mentioned, you know, they bid the project based on a number of signs they put out and types of signs and square footage of them. If these would have been included in that original bid plan, that I would have expect that traffic control price to have been a higher price with that original bid.
So is it your oversight?
I mean, I will say that looking back, hindsight being looking back, we would have liked to include those in the initial project plan. At the end of the project, the price to add these after versus including them in that original bid, I don't picture being different, the total end of the project by adding these after the fact.
Jerry, what you're saying is you don't blame the construction company.
Oh, no.
It was the engineering that did not have that in the original plan or inadequate.
Yeah, I mean, if it's not in the plan, how is the construction company supposed to know?
So you're not saying that we shouldn't pay the construction company.
I'm saying.
Or somebody
we
should.
Somebody needs to pay the
Yeah, but
construction
not
company.
us.
I'm saying, I don't know if it should be us or if it should be them.
Well, like I said, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, dollar for dollar, if these would have been included in that initial bid price would have been higher in, I would expect
Well, you
this
don't know
amount.
that for sure.
Would we not have shared that then with the county and some other things?
Did you hear?
What was that?
Tom said? Tom said, would we not have shared that with the county?
Yeah,
Like we did
the
other
overall
things?
traffic control plan, and everything in general is, like part of this project is Lyon County budget as well, and project with it being the street, so approximately half of the cost of this is kind of a street and Lyon County cost, and the other half is the city utility type cost.
So
Is the county getting billed for these additional signs as well?
It's all part of their eligible costs that traffic control is.
If I remember correctly, the county gave us X amount of dollars, right?
Yep.
Just a pot saying this is your money to put towards this project.
Yep.
So they're not going to take on any additional cost.
But so the county will only cover the county eligible expenses. So they're not gonna give us $1.8 million. If it comes out at 1.785, I think that's all they're gonna pay. You know, if it's, say that there's a change order and they, you know, the contract was reduced. That's my understanding. I don't know, Kyle, if that's correct.
That's the right understanding, yeah.
I don't know, Matt, you have.
I mean,
The dollar amount's fixed.
Yeah,
So it doesn't matter that
It
we gotta
doesn't-
pay
Yeah.
more.
doesn't matter to them unless they get money back. I mean, they don't care if it costs more, that's more on us.
But the max they'll pay is 1.8.
Yes.
Yeah.
But would they have not have paid some more when we first bid this? If you'd have done it correctly at that time as far as the signage, would we not have gotten more from the county?
I don't know that necessarily. I think that, like you had said, from the overall greater county budget, they had budgeted that 1.98 or 9, was it?
1.8.
Yep.
Was that just a percentage they figured out though? Their percentage, they perceived that was their percentage that they would pay
Yeah.
for the project.
They're
If the
basing,
signs would have been there, their percentage might have been a tick higher.
they're basing it on the actual, what their share of the cost would be. So if we weren't replacing the pipes, I think this is what it would cost for the county to do the project. They're just, you know, working with the county because we have infrastructure that's shot underneath it, and we want to get that fixed. The county's gonna pay for everything on top.
What is the dollar amount we're talking about here?
Like 8,000
About $8,900.
15,000.
or 15.
That's
$8,900.
Well,
for the
no,
total
that's-
change order.
Yeah, that's the whole-
$8,900.
And like I said, I mean, hindsight being 2020, we would have liked to include everything where we're at today in that original bid. If there are things that we have designed incorrectly and it needs to be removed and replaced, there's some pipes or some certain things wrong, that's something that I see as on us. If it's typically when it's something like this where there were 5 signs in the bid and at the end of the day the right thing to do is to include 6 or 7, that's still something that I guess would have been part of that original project cost either way. But
Okay,
I'm
so
open to
what are
talking
you
about it.
willing to step up and cover on account you missing part of it?
if there's the item in there that I see that they had an additional trip out here to add those signs, that mobilization of, I don't know, was it $1,000 some dollars? That's certainly something that, you know, looking back, if we would have had that in there with that extra trip out to add signs, whatever that was, that's something that I feel that responsibility for.
So who's to say they didn't charge extra when they made these signs because they had to make these special versus when they did the whole project? I mean, you know as well as I do, when you bid a job like you get a special pricing, and then when you add stuff on, you don't get that special pricing on half the stuff you add on anymore. Right?
That's tough to comment on.
But true.
Possibly.
Possibly.
I guess it just comes down to the nitty gritty here, Kyle, is.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the
Is it
day,
your company's
this,
responsibility versus the city's responsibility? That's the nitty gritty here. Not, you wish 2020 hindsight that you would have put those signs in. Well, we all wish that, but when you miss something, you have to pay the piper at that time. I guess the nitty gritty is, I'll say my feeling is your company is the one that missed the signage on the final plan that they had to bid on. It wasn't us. We hired your company to handle this for us. That's why you're getting paid, not you, your company is getting paid to be the construction manager or whatever the title is, I don't know. Engineer. I feel like that should be your company's, it was your company's air, so you should have to pay for the air.
What kind of money are we talking
So are we
again?
talking this $2,300 invoice?
No, I'm talking the 8,000. the 8,000 whatever.
So real money.
$856.22. I can honestly say I feel the exact same way Jerry does.
And I do too.
So I guess the question is you probably don't have the authority to say
don't
it. You might have to take it back to your bosses or whoever.
Absolutely will. I can understand the question and the thought on things. I will bring that back, and we'll see what we can do. At the end of the day, we've got a long history with the city and a lot of work happening here. That amount of money, one way or another, we don't want that to affect
No,
any
it
kind of
doesn't.
relationship and anything there, so.
But what you have to remember, Kyle, is we're also a little frustrated because of the project that was done down
Sure.
at the other end of the town where there's issues. And so it's when, like I was talking about, when you take money from something, well, when you start making errors and a little one here, a little one there, they all start adding up, and it adds up to more and more frustrations. $8,000, it's a
Yep.
drop in the bucket for these projects. It's kind of the principle is what we're getting to.
Okay, I can appreciate that.
Seems like you'd want to table that resolution
I think
and
so.
allow them to confer with their company and then bring a proposal back to the city.
Thank you.
So I'll make a motion to table the resolution 2023-59 for more information.
Second?
Kyle?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Maybe further discussion then at this point. From a greater perspective, we want to work something out, whatever the case is with ISG in the city. I think this resolution too, just something to think about is more for payment to the contractor, specifically too at this time. And I'm trying to weigh how that all fits in here too. There.
I got a good idea. You just pay the contractor and then we'll work it out.
Yeah, good idea.
Well, I mean, if we have to pay $2,000 of it or something, we can do that.
Yeah.
That way, the contractor gets his money. You get to think about it a little more.
Do you want to make a resolution to pay minus the amount in question? So then at least getting paid
Yeah, we can
something?
pay them for
And then the remaining amount is left
structure
outstanding?
Anyway.
'Cause, I mean, we're not questioning internal,
Yeah.
The external thing.
yeah.
I don't mean to make this about something else, but I don't want a contractor that's due some money to not get paid on account of trying to figure this part out too.
Idea
But
works.
I think you can make that resolution and then have or maybe needs to be with the caveat of the further discussion between city and ISG on it.
So you want
or
us to
something.
front the money and then we negotiate?
No, we're gonna say we'll pay half. We're gonna pay the,
Well, obviously, we would pay that other one with the pipe. But what he's saying is there's no offer from them to pay the contractor.
no,
And
we
the
know that.
contractor is not at issue.
I just have a problem paying the bill and then think we're gonna get reimbursed. Because even like the other time, then it was, we got some different services from you for the money. Well, maybe right now we're more into the dollars than services.
And if we pay half of it, then they're gonna say, well, they already paid half, so we'll just cover the other half. You know what I mean?
ISG?
Yeah, they'll say, well, since you already paid half, we'll just
That's
cover
your
it.
compromise, your
Well,
negotiation.
then I don't mean to try and pass it, so we'll get that part figured out at a separate time. I didn't mean that. I just, like I said, I don't want to,
I mean, I don't have a problem paying
figure out
the
the,
You definitely should pay the.
$7,000,
contractual
whatever. I
side.
don't have those dollar amounts right in front of me. I just have the combined dollar amounts.
Want to rescind your motion, Dave?
That we'll pay, we have to change the dollar
I think
amount
you-
in the
you made
resolution
a
to
motion to-
7,000. 'Cause that's not under question.
So these get pretty confusing when we change numbers,
Yeah, I know.
but, I guess for now, are we better off just tabling this and then see what ISG wants to do, and then bringing it into
Remind
pay app
me.
3. I don't know, 'cause this is when we pay that, right? 'Cause it's already been removed from pay app 2.
The actual payment part of it is, yeah, so it's
Yeah.
something that could go on the next agenda.
So we can put it on the 14th
Yep.
agenda.
Yep.
I don't know, is that
So then the contractor is not gonna get anything at this time?
not until it's approved? And that's the
Even the
problem.
portion with the pipe?
That work hasn't been done yet, so
Oh,
that
okay.
is still a future item,
Do it till he gets the money.
so.
We're still, motion is still standing.
And that was-
So let me ask you a question.
Okay.
Let me ask you a question though. So if you said because they're doing an inside drop and not the external drop, the external drop was bid on the job, right, you said? Not the inside drop? Isn't that what you said?
That's what there was still discussion around what the right unit was one way or another, so.
So which one was on the initial bid, the external?
The external drop is a contract bid item. We've got a handful of those going in various places in the project.
And you said this inside drop is replacing that, so then we would get the deduct for that one, right?
This entire look at that existing manhole was something that's gonna be an additional either way.
But won't we save on the cost of the external drop, I think is what she's saying, right? That we would
Yeah.
save that cost.
Which is cheaper, the internal or the external?
The internal that's being looked at is the cheaper of the two options for
So that
this
should give
particular
us some
thing.
credit.
The external wasn't included in that initial bid.
Oh, it was not?
Yeah.
Oh. What was then? Because it's a
I thought you
manhole.
said one.
Just the connection to that existing manhole.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you said that the, one of them was included.
No.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so we've got
Are
a
we
first and a
tabling it?
second of tabling,
tabling
so we
it,
just
right?
need a vote.
Okay, so we need a roll call.
So Dave, you have the
I motion second.
I second.
On table.
Alright, Dave Teague,
Aye.
Jenner Vizu,
Yes.
Gus Schmidt, Tom Dobson,
Yes.
Jerry Schulman,
Aye.
Greg Landite.
Aye.
Carries. I'll go to resolution.
How about me?
Oh, I did forget you, sorry. Mayor Corman.
Who could
Sorry,
forget
both.
you?
Call on me.
So can I ask a question from the citizens of Tracy? When are they gonna fix like 7th and A Street and 6th Street? Kyle?
The plan, we were just, Shane and I were talking about that earlier, the contractor is working on getting a plan together. They expect the concrete crews to be in to do a little bit of the curb patching, and then also the same crew to do Center Street next week. And then the patching, they'll be raising manholes up and doing the final paving here, I would expect in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
I mean, there's like
That's what we're looking at.
potholes in the middle of 7th Street, and they just did it.
And that will be fixed, then there'll be no more potholes.
That's right.
Okay, the next
Well,
resolution.
wait a minute.
Yeah.
Now, like we're talking about that, that thing is on hold right now, so there's no penalty being paid.
No, it's off of hold.
Should be off hold.
So
So
they
they're
are
paying
paying
penalty because
penalty.
it's not done?
Clock's ticking, so
Yeah.
if they don't get it done soon, it's gonna get penalized.
Oh.
And we'll
I
lose,
thought they came
we'll
on
lose
penalties as
Monday?
soon as it came on.
No, we don't, nothing to do with it.
Liquidated damages.
No, it was halted long before substantial completion, so when it halts, the clock quits ticking on the last fall of it, so now it's ticking again.
I was gonna say, I didn't think there was very long for them before they went into penalty though, I
We
thought.
figured that out, and it was, when we stopped them, because we wanted to do testing, the clock stopped. So, because that's on us, not them, so. we have to give them the difference between that and the substantial last fall, which is what we're giving them this year, that difference from when we stopped until the substantial deadline, so.
You don't know when that is?
I think they only have like 3.5, 4 weeks, something like that left, and then LD kicks in. So,
Okay, I'm just gonna ask, is it gonna be done by Labor Day parade? Because that's,
they'll be in the LD by then.
that's 6th Street, it's Emery Street, I mean,
That's
it's,
everything. That's definitely
parade
part of the discussions that we've been having with them on schedule. Shane's
And I sent
been
Scott the
working with the contractor on the parade route too. That affects Center Street as well. They're working pretty hard to get all that curb in and to get people out. Like I said, they're just broader project update, I guess. Center Street, all the utility work is done. They're working their way on street work, getting close, all the way, working their way north all the way up to Trunk Highway 14. So I saw that they were between that last half a block of North Street and the highway there today, digging things out for the street work. I would expect end of week them to be hauling in and having some gravel on the street again, and then the tentative plan, good weather, good construction, to have curb and gutter and next week out there in Center Street. And like I said, along with that comes some of the work over on the last year's project. And but yeah, I think they're working pretty hard to try and catch up with that and be able to get all the paving done. So that mid-August timing is still the goal.
Well, they start early in the morning and they
get that-
usually
Just
go
the
to at least
piping?
7,
To get
Yeah.
that,
Extension.
piping's late.
usually.
There's no doubt that they haven't been working long hours.
They've been working extremely long hours.
So I will say that. Yep.
Okay, the next one,
we got resolution 2023-64, change order number 3 for request for extension on Center Street project.
okay, well, let's have a discussion about that one.
Change.
so the extension on Center Street, you just said they're on,
That was
Line
for
to-
the extra dirt they took out by the gas station.
We already gave
that
them
was just
Yeah,
3
that was
days.
already,
This is
for-
going till October, that's what I'm wondering. Is that just the the pipelining or whatever? Or I thought it looked like it was for the Center Street project.
This resolution 2023-64 is for Center Street project
Yeah,
from
they want-
RNG.
So they want a time extension on that project, right? I thought we couldn't do
How
that.
much? Yeah, I thought RFD or ROD or whatever it is wouldn't allow us to extend it.
Yeah, so that's the ask, is the time extension on the project. I think what they had provided showed 30 days to the overall contract.
66 or so.
That's the
No, it
next
says-
one.
Says in the
I jumped to
resolution.
Sorry.
This one says 30 days.
It's, yeah. Their ask there is, I think, initially they're asking that on the front end, just, I think due to having a long spring season, a long winter season into the project, and then, from a contractual side of things, they're asking for that time based on, I guess their interpretation of the contract, but Matt can maybe comment on that in a minute. But from a greater perspective, I think they're still working as if there's no extension. They're working toward that mid-August date at this point, and with further discussion with city and with rural development, I think rural development's not formal, but offhand comment was that they didn't think that they would approve this particular ask or this particular change order, what's being asked. That's not to say that,
Would not approve?
correct, from their
Which
side of
means if
things.
we don't get the work done, was it my understanding we lose their grant, their funding then?
That is something there that we've had Shane had mentioned earlier, a lot of discussions and calls with rural development just on all of the project basis, and that is something that Rural Development wants all of the project funding to be used before end of September. So that's
Oh,
something.
before end of September. I
No.
thought we had an August 15th deadline.
We do have an August 15th deadline on this particular contract.
So I'm
There's-
confused.
Okay,
We
the
could lose
contract,
money if it's not done by August 15th?
No.
the contract is through August 15th, but
Correct.
R&D will let it
But-
go to September or not?
Based on what's being asked right now in this particular change order, RD had commented that they didn't think they would approve this particular change order as asked.
So then how are
I'm
you
not-
asking us to?
Yeah.
RD had told me that their formal process is we need to take, the city needs to make the decision on it before it would go to them being the last step in the process.
So there's,
So
Um,
when did they start this project?
May 8th.
But when did they initially plan on starting the project?
May 10th.
No, I thought it was in
It was
April.
March, I think.
They're,
Well, they sent all those charts, I think, just to bury us in paper.
I'm not sure which one you're looking at. The initial schedule provided at the pre-construction meeting did show May 8th as well.
Yep.
Gene, what's your recommendation?
Well, to me, they scheduled it, they started on schedule, according to their schedule at the pre-construction meeting on May 8th, I think. They started on May 8th. I don't see any reason why they shouldn't complete it by August 15th. Or August 19th, I think, now with the extra
3 days for dirt.
contaminated soil. Yeah, it was 3.5 days.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Rounded.
I'll give them 3.5 days for the
We already
soil.
did.
and out of
I'm good
all
with
of
that.
the rain events, I think there was only one very heavy rain that maybe affected the project's ability to be out there working. Otherwise, they were there.
And they're latching on to abnormal weather conditions in the contract to support their request for an extension, but a lot of those weather events were well before the start date, and they're trying to support that with MnDOT's schedule of days that MnDOT's determined it was not feasible to work, but that's not applicable to the definitions of this contract. And I'm comfortable, I mean, it becomes an issue of if they want to litigate it, then you have to litigate it, but with those dates occurring before the start date, that I'm pretty comfortable with the city taking the position to deny the request. And especially if you have a indication from R&D, from a practical standpoint, that they're not in favor of it, it kind of indicates that even if you were to approve it, then it's likely not going to be finally approved by them.
Yeah, so we can't take that.
And we're the ones supposedly losing the funding. When it comes down to that and they're not honoring the timelines, then does the construction company pay what we don't get? Is the whole grant or money funding
No.
in jeopardy?
Probably not if we would extend this. If we don't extend it, they have to finish it.
They want to get paid.
And they knew it was a tight deadline when they bid on this project.
I'll make the the motion to deny resolution 2023-64.
I'll second that.
First and second, any other discussion? Roll call, please.
All right. George Landite.
Aye.
Tom Dobson.
Aye.
Jerry Schoens.
Aye.
Seth Schmidt.
Yes.
Jan Arvizu.
Yes.
Dave Teagues.
Aye.
Mayor Corman.
Aye.
Not gonna be a fun day for him tomorrow.
Yeah, sorry, Kyle.
Just a quick follow-up to that too. I do want to note though that, I mean, just because this particular instance are asked for a certain amount of days, you know, this 30 days, it doesn't preclude the city from not looking at another request for extension for whatever other reason, or USDA was clear to say, you know, even if we don't approve it, it doesn't require the city to enforce liquidated damages if they're a day late or a week late or whatever, and they feel that the contractor is making every effort that they can to get it done on time. It's not necessarily saying you have to hold the contractor to that date or to those liquidated damages. It's just this particular request, so something that.
So they're saying these things, but they're the ones giving us the funding. So when when do they start withholding the funding because it's not done? So then the liquidated damages comes out of the contractor's pocket or their insurance company? Or
Liquidated
bond?
damages are a result of the contractor not finishing the work on the date that was included in the contract.
It's like a penalty
And that's
for
what
them.
the contractor's charge that either comes out of their final pay order or the city assesses that to them as additional cost. Usually it comes out of the final pay order.
Okay, but somehow I was under the impression, and I'm kind of late to this construction business, and it's just my first few months on the job. I thought there was the potential, I thought I heard Eric say there was a potential to lose funding. Not true?
The potential to lose funding is for them not finishing on time. The liquidated damages are what we charge the contractor for not finishing on time.
Yes, but our funding source, are they gonna withhold money from the project and not pay?
Shane, do you want to comment on this, or you want me to, or funding
I'm
things
getting-
that
I just-
slightly outside of my
So-
side of things, but I can,
As far as funding this project, we have to have it all expended by the end of September.
and when you say this project, this is the greater 3A, this is 3A1, 2, Center Street, the lining, all of them in total.
Yep.
Not necessarily just,
Including fixing up,
Yep.
so all of that has to be done by September what?
31st,
30.
30th. Yeah, they're in 31.
And
I'd
if
say the
not done
31st would be
by-
a great
One extra
contract
day.
date.
Yeah, non-existent. Okay, so we could lose our source of funding.
Well, I'm not gonna sit here and worry about that right now.
No,
Well, that's to me like a big deal.
well, we're not going to.
But we're
because
not
we denied
extending
their-
it, Jan.
We
We're
did
saying,
that.
no, you're gonna get it done
Right.
according to
Okay.
the contract.
Even if you have to work
Well, he-
Saturday.
Yeah.
Until
All,
midnight.
if you work
instead of
all
7
night,
p.m.
keep those people up that live on the street.
Yeah, I don't
I'm
think,
hard of hearing
I
naturally,
don't
so
think
it
they've
should
worked
not
any
affect me.
Saturdays yet, so they have put long days in, yes. But
That I can vouch for.
I've seen people work Saturdays if they're running behind or need to catch up, so it's not the end of the world.
Okay,
Next.
So what's the next change order?
I'll get resolution 2023-67 for change order number 1, request for extension.
67 or 66?
67.
66 was the donations that we
Yep.
approved earlier.
No, 6E.
Well, then this is marked wrong in here. So it says 66, a resolution approving change order 1 for the Phase 3 sanitary sewer
Huh.
improvements. So this is 67, actually?
67 on the
Mine says
printed version.
67.
On the printed
Well,
version, it's
The
67.
one that got published is 66.
Oh, I'm looking at it. Not the actual resolution.
I'm just pointing it out, making sure which number we're playing with here.
Yeah, we had two 66s.
Gotcha.
I'll make a note of that.
Just double check it, just to make sure that we're,
Okay. So this is, basically this change order request is to give them time to complete the project, being it took so long for the state to come up with their bonding bill and providing us with funding for PFA to ensure that we can do this project. So that there's a fair amount of logistics, and some of our meetings were, a lot of meetings were about in the last couple of weeks with RD and a little bit with PFA, but so this is gonna, so halfway through the project we'll burn through our grant funds. So you may question, well, you know, this end date is past the end of September. So what we're gonna do is, we're eligible through RD, so this is an RD only project and it's mostly grant. So part of one of the eligible grant items is interim interest for the RD bond. We have been paying that out of pocket. So what we're gonna do is reimburse ourselves through RD to cover the end of the project. So RD will be wiped out basically the end of September. And then they're gonna pay, I think it's around 800,000 is what it was. So that gets us more than halfway through the project. I think it's a 1.3 million, I think, with all the addendas.
Construction.
So that'll get us through to the end to clean up whatever's left. And then whatever's not, I guess whatever we don't use out of that interim interest, we're still eligible just to have because we've already paid it out. So that's gonna be our buffer at the end of the project, so if that makes sense. It's not an easy thing to grasp, but
Does weather affect them doing the lining at all? I'm not saying 20 below, you know, working in
Correct,
January, but I
yeah.
mean, if
A
it's
lot
a
less
normal
than
fall when it's
than a
cool.
typical construction project. I mean, when you're talking cool, I think they'd actually prefer the colder weather. If they need that to keep their resin and the materials cold, they'll probably show up with an air-conditioned truck, actually, for the
Gotcha.
materials, but weather is, you know, when you're not doing all the excavating and have soils involved, it's not as much of a factor. I won't say it's zero factor, but it's a lot
Not
less.
as big a factor.
Yep, it's a lot less.
Gotcha. Well, I'd make the motion to approve resolution 2023-67.
second.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a first and a second. Do we have any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Jerry Jones,
Aye.
George Landite,
Aye.
Tom Dobson,
Aye.
Seth Schmidt,
Yes.
Jenner Bisu,
Yes,
Dave Peaks,
Aye.
and Mayor Corman.
Aye.
Now we'll go to 9B. I'll turn this one over to Matt. Update on cannabis laws as of August 2023.
Mayor and council, I'll try to be as brief and succinct as possible, given the meetings running a little long. August 1st of this year, marijuana is becoming legal, as you know. The legislature passed that recently, I think at the end of May. So what that entails and allows is that people 21 or older can use and possess certain marijuana products and certain ounces or weights of marijuana in the state of Minnesota. What's going to happen first is just the use and possession, so it's no longer criminal. You can use or possess the amounts that I've listed in the memorandum that I previously circulated. That you can look at that at your own leisure. That just kind of gives you an idea of what's permissible. Essentially, it's permissible in home. The plants that you can grow, you have to at least keep them from public view. You can grow up to 8 plants, but it has to be locked and then enclosed and not viewable from the public. So there's safeguards that the legislature have included. I can't say that they've included all of those in this legislation, but essentially it's legal for people to possess and use marijuana, certain products, certain weights in the state of Minnesota. The legislation did not prohibit or ban the use or possession of marijuana in public places. That is something that's on the individual cities to pass ordinances to regulate that. So I would encourage the city to do that if that's something that you're concerned about, is that you can ban it from general public places. So any public place, not the possession, but the use. So that would include smoking, ingesting edibles, or whatever other products that are permissible. I don't know. I'm not familiar with that. So, but the city can ban that in public places. So that would include city streets, city parks. The city needs to pass an ordinance to do that. So if you want to do that, the first step would be to, and I've indicated that in my memorandum, authorize me to draft emergency and regular ordinance. The city council is going to have to first pass an emergency ordinance, given the time frame before this law becomes valid, because your city charter requires for a regular ordinance for the city council first to approve the written draft, then to publish it, hold a public hearing, and then actually pass the ordinance. That's going to require at least 2 meetings. So that's going to be beyond August 1st. So what I recommend, if that's something the city council wants to do, is at the next meeting, I can have a emergency ordinance prepared that would ban the use of marijuana products in public. And then that would span the gap until you pass the regular ordinance. and then that would take effect and revert back to the time frame in which the emergency ordinance passed, so there'd be no lapse, and you would be able to regulate that. Minor notes to make for your consideration is, okay, so if someone is using in public, what's the penalty? It's a petty misdemeanor. That's a penalty of up to $300. That's it. They can't be jailed. All they can do is be cited. I'm still uncertain whether, and I'm assuming you can, is you can confiscate the product if they are using it in public. That's a question I don't know yet. So a lot of these things are going to need to be figured out. It's still relatively new. But if you see someone in public and they're smoking marijuana, you can report that to law enforcement. They can cite them, but that's it. I'm assuming you'd be able to confiscate that because then
The evidence of
it eliminates,
petty
yes. So it removes it for that instance, but they could light up, smoke again, and that's another citation. But so the effectiveness of the punishment of it is not great. However, if you would possess or use or keep marijuana or marijuana products above the permissible amounts, there's additional criminal penalties for that. And there's felony, gross misdemeanor, misdemeanor. So there's more significant penalties. If you would have more than 2 pounds of marijuana at you at your home,
Pillowcase full.
that's what's permissible, but that would be illegal if you have more than an amount. And then that's where law enforcement would get involved and could prosecute them for that. That's a whole nother issue because you have to get in the house. And so I don't think this is well thought out. A lot of cities are scrambling to do this. Marshall, and I think Duluth, in my research, was passing an ordinance to ban it this evening. So there are some templates to go off of in terms of banning the public use of it, but essentially that's all the city can do is the public use. The private stuff, they have to comply with the amounts that the legislature passed. If they possess or use more than that, then that's a crime, but that's a separate issue because you have to get in the home and to enforce it and all that. In terms of licensing, the city really doesn't have to worry anything about until at least January 1, 2025, because the state has not created the Office of Cannabis Management yet. And until they do, they can't issue licenses for retail dispensaries. So you're not going to have to worry about that, at least immediately. However, how you're going to need to worry about that is how you zone it. So you can place it within certain areas of the city. And I spoke with Shane about this. Probably the zoning commission should be involved in this, is identifying where you want to specifically zone it. I would probably suggest an industrial area where there's not a lot of traffic and it's set aside, but that's something the city would need to consider, is you can regulate where these businesses are located. And that's important because you don't want that near school, near church, downtown businesses, to have that foot traffic and that clientele.
So they might need to buy a lot out at the industrial park.
But with that
I
said,
was thinking the same
But with
thing.
that said,
Get the
state
infrastructure.
statute, so the city has to issue at least one license if someone would be approved by the state office and would apply to the city would have to issue a license to that entity. One license for every 12,500 residents. Obviously Tracy is below that, so the maximum that you would have to issue would be one marijuana retail license. However, there's some provisions in the law that Lyon County probably has a 25,000 population. State statute says that in Lyon County, technically they would have to issue 2. So the statute says if there's already 2 existing licenses within the county, the city would not have to issue one. So if Marshall has 2, and Marshall would be permitted 2 licenses, if they're issued 2 licenses in Marshall, the city could say, we don't have to issue one because there's already 2 that would satisfy that 2 license for 12,500 residents in the county.
What if you issued a license to someone that did not sell, just got the license to stop anybody else from doing it?
You're paying quite a bit.
That I can't answer because I'm assuming they're going to have restrictions. It's going to be very cost prohibitive, I'd imagine, to go through that procedure to get licensed by the state, because there's going to be a lot of safeguards. in place and capital requirements. So I don't know how likely that would be, George. If you spend all that money, you're gonna want to make that revenue back.
What about, you said public places, you know, I'm not picking on business, let's say Midwest, say the lumberyard, say the caboose, could they smoke it there?
Nope, included in the packet, thank you for reminding me that, there's already existing Minnesota Indoor Clean Air Act that
Not
already,
every place on their lot though.
that already prohibits, people from smoking inside. And that would include marijuana and vape pens, so you already can't use or, you can't smoke. The restriction doesn't preclude ingesting marijuana inside public buildings. Or at least, public buildings, until the city passes an ordinance banning that. Now, let's say, the caboose, someone smokes on there, that's a private property. So they have to be given permission from the owner to use marijuana. So that's where businesses need to be aware of that, and they can post signs, we do not permit smoking or use of marijuana or marijuana products on this property. That's how they would safeguard themselves and would allow law enforcement to get involved to basically enforce that. But for the city, what I'm asking is, if you're interested, I don't know what your thoughts are, but if you want me to, as I detailed, the first step would be emergency ordinance and a regular ordinance. The timing requires the emergency ordinance first. But just authorization for me to do that, I can have one ready for your next meeting, and then subsequently you would pass a regular ordinance.
So what do we do between August 1st and August 14th? Is that, would your emergency one?
It would be in
take
effect by then. Or wait,
So you
your
don't
next
have
meeting
a-
is, okay, yeah,
Our
you're
next
right.
meeting is until the 14th.
You're right. My months are
So
getting,
is your emergency one cover the 1st through the 14th?
I could have something ready for you, and this would require a special meeting, but I could have something enacted by next Monday. The emergency ordinance, it takes effect 24 hours after being adopted by the city. Doesn't require any publication, so probably you'd want that in place by the 30th, so then you're looking at Friday.
So what happens if we wait until the 14th?
Technically, people could walk down the street and smoke marijuana.
I think it'd be a lot cleaner to put it into effect by the 1st, so people don't have 2 weeks to do
To
it
test it out?
and not get told they can't do it, and then all of a sudden come
Oh,
the
I suppose.
14th. Well, I was just doing it the other day and Jason didn't stop me or anything. I think it'd be cleaner and easier to have it done before the 1st.
Do you have any recommendations, Mr. Officer, back there?
There's a lot of confusion going on with this right now.
That's part of it, why I didn't bring this to you early, because there's just a lot of research and people are scrambling to figure out kind of how do you regulate.
Even the league isn't even putting out a training for law enforcement until the 27th of this month. And it goes in effect the 1st.
So you said you could get us an emergency ordinance?
If you have a meeting scheduled for, it probably have to be this Friday.
28th?
28th?
Technically, I mean, you could have a meeting on next Monday. It might not go in effect until like 12 o'clock on August 1st, depending upon when you have your meeting, to be technical. If it's
Well, if we
24
have to
hours.
have a special meeting either way.
Yeah.
Are people gonna be around on the 28th?
I'm not.
I will be.
I will be.
Well,
I think.
depending on when you have it, I work that day.
Let's say 6 o'clock at night if you're gonna.
Yeah, I could do that. It's just, I'm the only one working on
Well, then
Fridays,
you got a
so.
quorum, so.
You need at least 2/3 votes
Can
to approve it.
Tom be here?
Which day, Monday,
Friday.
Friday.
this week?
Yes.
Yeah, you're gone.
I won't be here.
But that's why I'm wondering if Tom would be.
I will be here.
So I'm the only one gone, so.
Let's do it.
And as long as you have it typed up, we should be fine, Shane, without you, shouldn't we?
Yeah, Diane's not here this week either, so they'll have.
We got Jeff.
Then it's down to Jeff.
I'll be here.
And then, if you do adopt it, you just have to post it in at least three conspicuous places. So obviously, the city office, you would probably want to put some signage up, public parks, Shane could probably
grocery
work the
store
Publix.
type thing.
But it could just be laminated signs, it doesn't have to be.
3
a
conspicuous
fancy
places, that's
made
what the
sign.
charter
Oh,
says, so.
3
But later on, you probably want to post that in your parks and such.
Yeah.
So that people know, and then notify business owners and such that they could put the signs up as well.
Is Diane back Monday?
Monday.
So she could maybe make the signs Monday,
Just has to be 3.
or 3 signs, and we can post them wherever. I mean, we can decide on the 3 locations.
Conspicuous places, so whatever
Yeah,
that
the
means.
council that knows how to make signs.
Friday the 28th at 6.
I just said that, doesn't matter to me, because I'm.
How early can you make it, Jen?
That would probably be the earliest.
6:30 works good
Okay.
too.
It won't take very long.
No, because that's the only thing we're gonna.
I'm gonna-
I
I'll have
can
a-
make 6. Can you work?
You can, I can.
I'll send you a draft and you guys can note any comments, so then when you show up, it should be ready to pass, like, very briefly, so it won't take very
Are you
long.
gonna want this televised?
Doesn't have to be.
Doesn't have to be.
You know how to run the recorder, right?
I'm not here.
You're not here either.
Don't look at me.
Jeff knows how to
You know how to
run
run
it.
Jeff
the recorder?
knows.
He can record it on his phone if nothing else.
Yeah.
I can walk you through it too.
Yeah, we could do that on Wednesday. No, you're not
Oh,
around.
you're gone
No,
today.
just give me a call.
Okay.
I figured
You
it
won't have
out,
to do
Jeff,
any
you,
of that.
yeah.
Well, Kyle will probably be here. You can
So if you guys want to do that, just need a motion for a
A
meeting.
motion that we have a special meeting on Friday, July 28th at 6 PM
Second.
to do an emergency ordinance concerning marijuana in public places.
First and second, any further discussion? Tam, did you have a question?
Not about that, no. I have one after that.
Okay, roll call, please.
Acceptable.
All right. All right. Dave Teags,
Hi.
Dan Arvizu,
Yes.
Seth Schmidt,
Yes.
Tom Dobson,
Yes.
Jerry Schoens,
Aye.
George Landay,
Aye.
Mayor Corman.
Aye.
I missed anybody today.
Nope, you did good.
Now, do we have to do something in order to be able to direct him to
Let's make,
make up the
he's talking to the
resolution or
paper
whatever
now.
he's doing?
No.
Okay.
Then we just have a full resolution on the 14th.
He'll draft that in accordance with our, so it jives with our city code. We've already looked at that. As far as the resolution, you don't need any guidance from the council at this point for,
No, it's just gonna be it'll be a kind of a placeholder to ban public use until you guys adopt the regular ordinance, which will be more detailed, and I'll go through the city code. There are some changes that need to be made to kind of incorporate this into that, but I'll keep you advised of that.
So as long as we all do our homework, it should take us 5 minutes.
I will make it my effort to have everything right and ready for you so that it is 5 minutes.
Okay.
Read this.
Yes.
Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Yeah.
Aye.